Welcome to Psychology of Daf. We are in Gemara Succah, Daf Gimel, and today we're going to talk about, is the marriage partner you choose Bashert according to the Rambam? That is your choice of spouse divinely ordained? Now, the Gemara in Amud Aleph, Gimel Amud Aleph, references a pasuk regarding which people are exempt from certain forms of military service, including somebody who just built a home or got married. The pasuk in Dvarim Perchaf Psukim Hey through Zion says, "V'diberu hashoterim el ha'am lemor miu ish asher bana vayis chodosh v'lo chanocho yelech v'yoshu leveso pen yomus b'melchama v'ish acher yechanachenu u'miu ish asher eras Isha v'lo l'kacha yelech v'yashov leveso pen yomos b'malchama v'ish acher yikachenu." The pasuk basically says that the officials before the battle should announce, has anybody built a new home? Has anybody just become betrothed to a woman? And if so, he should go back home lest he die in battle and not be able to consummate and enjoy the material aspects of his life. Now, the Rambam in Shmona Prakim Perach Ches makes a fascinating observation regarding these psukim and the realm of existential human choice. Now, many ideas in our traditions imply that our choice of spouse and other matters are completely under divine guidance via providence. But from the psukim over here, the very notion that one can build a house or get married and then suddenly die during war, but also choose to stay home and avoid that fate, implies that human choice is key and not providence. After all, the pasuk clearly implies that depending on if the person chose to stay in battle or not, his fate would play out accordingly. So here's what the Rambam says in the Shmona Prakim. If man was forced to act based on some pre-existing future, then the commands and prohibitions of the Torah would become null and void, and the law would be completely false, since man would have no freedom of choice in what he does. Moreover, it would be useless for a man to study, to instruct, or attempt to learn a profession or skill, as it would be entirely impossible for him, on account of the external force compelling him, according to the opinion of those who hold this view, to keep from doing a certain act, from gaining certain knowledge, or from acquiring a certain characteristic. It would be all divinely ordained. Reward and punishment too would be pure injustice, both as regards man towards man and between God and man. Suppose under such conditions that Shimon should kill Reuven. Why should the former be punished, seeing that he was constrained to do the killing, and Reuven was predestined to die? If such were the true state of affairs, all precautionary measures, such as building houses, providing means of subsistence, fleeing when one fears dangers, and so forth, would be completely useless, for that which is decreed beforehand must necessarily happen. This, obviously, is completely unsound. It's also necessary to take all the precautionary measures told by us by the Torah, such as, for example, pen yomos b'malchama, maybe he will die in battle. However, the statement found in the Chachamim, in Brachos Lamed Gimel Beis and other places in the Gemara, Hakol b'dei Shemayim chutz mi'yirah Shemayim, all is in the power of God except for the fear of God. That's operative and in accord to what we have laid down here. Men are, however, very prone to err, supposing that many of their actions, in reality, the result of their own free will, are forced upon them. As, for instance, marrying a certain woman or acquiring a certain amount of money. Such a supposition is untrue. If a man chooses to marry a woman legally, then she becomes his wife, and he did a mitzvah. If he chooses to marry a person who he's forbidden to marry, that was his choice, and he did an avera. God does not decree that a man shall sin. Now, as regards to the theory generally accepted by people, and likewise found in the sayings of our Rabbanim and in the teachings of our Nevi'im, that man sitting and rising, and in fact all his movements are governed by the will and desire of God, it may be said to be true, but only in this respect. For example, when a stone is thrown into the air and falls to the ground, it is correct to say that the stone fell in accordance with the will of God, for it's true that God decreed that there be a force called gravity that causes things to be drawn back to the air, just like fire rises. But it's wrong to suppose that when a certain part of the earth is thrown upward, God wills it at that very moment that it should fall. Now, I know that this is not according to the standard teaching you get in yeshiva or seminary, and you are supposed to believe that every choice that you make, especially your spouse, is Bashert. And it sounds like the Rambam is saying that really nothing is God's will, and that they're just the basic forces and circumstances of life. However, the Rambam, the Guide for the Perplexed, gives a more nuanced view, which is subject to much debate and and interpretation. There are layers and layers of understanding necessary to really do his view justice. However, in the small amount of time that we have, I'll try to give a flavor of what the Rambam is trying to say and why. In the Moreh Nevuchim, Chelik Gimel Perak Nun Aleph, which is actually one of the key prakim in the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam makes another point that is key. Divine providence is dependent on the degree to which a person mindfully attaches his awareness and day-to-day actions to God and his will. Thus, one person can stumble through life oblivious and be subject to entropic, random, natural forces, while another person can, through attachment to God, experience minor, unconscious prophecies guiding his actions. Therefore, I believe a number of helpful ideas emerge from the Rambam's view of providence, which can be integrated in a psychologically and spiritually healthy way. Number one, what happens in the world physically and materially to us is often just about the structure of the nature of life. It's neither good nor bad inherently, nor does it have to be in and of itself a reward or punishment from God. It simply is day-to-day life and the nature of physical existence. However, number two, what meaning we make out of what happens to us, and whether we decide to become closer or further from God, or decide to make healthier, more moral choices or less so, is completely up to us. Furthermore, it is divine providence itself that God designed the world in such a way that humans engage with it, use their free will, grow and feel healthy and spiritual satisfaction of taking on challenges and living productively. Humans simply feel better and happier when they are taking on challenges and mastering them, not when they are coddled and taken care of. This is discussed in a most beautiful way in the Rambam's Guide for the Perplexed, Part 3, Chapter 32. Now, in that sense, anything that happens in the world is truly God's will. And this is no small thing. And we should be grateful for the wonders and beauties that life really offers us because of how God provided for us by creating us and the world on a relatively level playing field to engage in life. Number three, to the extent that one can continue to cultivate mindful attachment to God, that is, in daily and even moment-by-moment focus and fulfillment of His will, it allows for a special channel of divine inspiration and guidance to enlighten us. In so doing, a person may indeed merit unusual divine protection through being inspired and guided, perhaps even unconsciously, to make health-promoting and success-promoting decisions. This is something people can experience in everyday life. There are so many ways in which circumstances and events show us what we need to do and how we need to grow, and if we keep an open mind and heart. So, is your spouse Bashert? Well, it is and it isn't. Maybe at the moment that you chose your spouse, you were inspired to choose the right person. Maybe at the moment that you chose your spouse, or your spouse chose you, maybe you were disconnected from God, and what you were doing was not necessarily God's will, but it was God's will that you live in the world, and it is God's will that you experience the world, and you learn from everything that happens to you. And the spouse that you are with right now, right at this moment, offers you incredible opportunities to learn about yourself and to learn about the world. And the meaning you make from that, and whether or not you stay attached to Hashem or you stay attached to your spouse, is your choice. Hakol b'dei Shemayim, chutz mi'yireh Shemayim. Nothing is under our control. The only thing that is under our control is the meaning we make from it and our wish to be attached to God, or for that matter to our spouses or not. The same is going on with our spouse. So we could mourn or feel bitter or awful about what happened to us. We could be passive and say that we have no control over what happens to us, but neither of those points are true.